Let's talk about something that's probably happening in your organization right now. You're likely wasting millions of dollars. And the culprit? It's almost always poor project prioritization. Today, we're not just going to point out this chaos, we're going to give you a science-backed blueprint to fix it, and maybe even double your portfolio's ROI. Let's dive in.
So does this sound familiar? You've got a project portfolio where somehow everything is labeled top priority. Your teams are completely overloaded, they're confused, and they're constantly switching from one urgent task to another. If you're nodding your head right now, trust me, you are not alone. It's one of the biggest red flags that your whole system is broken.
And all that confusion? It comes with a staggering price tag. According to the Project Management Institute, a full 20% of the average project portfolio is pure waste. These are projects that don't actually align with the company's strategy and, let's be honest, should probably just be stopped. I mean, think about that for a second. 1/5 of your entire investment just gone. That's a huge opportunity just waiting to be reclaimed.
So, let's put a name to this problem. It's time to take a tour. Welcome to the chaos.
Do any of these hit a little too close to home? You've got the classic, way too many projects, not nearly enough people to do them. Then you've got the infamous pet projects, the ones championed by a senior leader that soak up resources but don't really deliver any value. This, of course, leads to these constant, painful battles over who gets resources, where decisions aren't based on strategy, but on who's the most powerful person in the room.
This analogy just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly explains that loudest voice problem. Without a clear, fair system, your project backlog is just a chaotic free-for-all. It's stressful, it's inefficient, and it means the projects that get the green light aren't the ones with the most value, they're just the ones with the loudest champions.
Now here's the crazy part. A big piece of this problem is that the tools most companies use to try and manage this chaos, well, they usually just make things a whole lot worse.
Think about it. Everyone's default is the spreadsheet, right? But they're so prone to error, they're a nightmare for collaboration, and the scoring, well, it's rarely based on any real science. Then you have decisions based on gut feel, which is really just a nice way of saying personal bias. And what about something that sounds objective, like only focusing on ROI? Even that's flawed because it completely ignores crucial things like strategic fit and risk that you can't just slap a dollar sign on.
Here's the bottom line. The single point of failure for all these methods, they run on opinion, bias, and internal politics, not on objective, collaborative, data-driven analysis. Okay, but it absolutely does not have to be this way. Let's pivot away from the problem and talk about a real, science-backed system for a solution.
Instead of relying on all that gut feel and political nonsense, the solution is to adopt a process that's grounded in something called decision science. This is a whole field of study dedicated to making really complex choices more rational, more transparent, and way more effective.
The specific method we're talking about is called the Analytic Hierarchy Process, or AHP. Now, don't get scared off by the jargon. At its heart, it's just a really smart, structured way to break down a huge, messy decision, like which projects to fund, into a bunch of smaller, more manageable pieces. It's literally designed to minimize human bias and, this is the most important part, to force a real, honest conversation about what value actually means to your organization.
So, how does this actually work? Well, it's a surprisingly simple three-step process. First, you define value. You get all the key stakeholders in a room and you agree on the criteria for what makes a project valuable. Is it about boosting revenue, reducing risk, improving customer happiness? You get it all out on the table. Second, you weight what matters. This is where the magic happens. Using a technique called pairwise comparison, you make leaders choose, is increasing revenue more important than reducing risk? By making a whole series of these simple, head-to-head choices, you create a real, mathematical weighting for your goals. No more guesswork. And finally, you have your subject matter experts score the proposed projects against that clear, agreed-upon framework. The whole thing is transparent, it's collaborative, and it's incredibly powerful.
And this, my friends, is where all that work pays off big time, leading to very real, very tangible returns on your investment. And here's how it makes your choices so obvious. Once you have a reliable score for value, you can plot it against cost. Right away, you can see your stars, the high-value, low-cost projects you should absolutely be doing. But even more importantly, you can finally spot and put a number on the pet projects, those low-value, high-cost drains on the budget that make up that 20% waste. This gives you the hard data you need to stop them in their tracks.
But the benefits go way beyond just picking the right projects.
Get this. According to the American Psychological Association, when people are forced to constantly switch between tasks, which is exactly what happens when you have too many priority one projects, they lose up to 40% of their productive time.
The fix here sounds almost too simple. Stop starting everything at once. With the clear priorities you get from your AHP model, you can actually stagger your projects. By starting fewer things, you finish them faster, you get the benefits sooner, and you get back that 40% of lost productivity. I know it feels a little counterintuitive, but it is so incredibly powerful.
So let's just recap the wins here. Research from McKinsey shows that organizations that do this well deliver 40% more value. Data from PMI shows that these aligned projects are 57% more likely to succeed. And beyond the numbers, you get clear governance, where data finally replaces politics, and you get aligned teams who actually understand how their day-to-day work connects to the company's biggest goals.
Okay, so you're probably thinking, this all sounds great, but where on earth do I even begin? What's that very first step you can take out of the chaos?
Your first move isn't to go out and implement a new tool or some complex process. Nope. It's to articulate the problem in a language your leaders will understand. Build the business case for change. Use the stats we've talked about today. Figure out the cost of that 20% waste and that 40% productivity loss in your organization. Frame it not as, our process is messy, but as we are leaving a ton of money and value on the table.
And we'll leave you with this one final thought to chew on. Just take a second and think about your own organization. If you had the data and the authority to stop just one low-value pet project tomorrow, which one would it be? Answering that question for yourself, that's the real first step on the path from chaos to clarity.